she prevented the time, and on Easter evening, having cut her hair, put on the habit, and slept a little, she went out of her chamber about 4 a.m, taking nothing but 1 penny to buy bread for that day. And it being said to her on the going out, "Where is thy faith? In a penny?" she threw it away, begging pardon of God for her fault, and saying, "No, Lord, my faith is not in a penny, but in thee alone." Thus she went away wholly delivered from the heavy burden of the cares and good things of this world, and found her soul so satisfied that she no longer wished for anything upon earth, resting entirely upon God, with this only fear, lest she should be discovered and be obliged to return home, for she felt already more content in this poverty than she had done for all her life in the delights of the world. Close quote. Footnote. Another example from Starbuck's manuscript collection. Quote, "At a meeting held at 6 the next morning, I heard a man relate his experience. He said, the Lord asked him if he would confess Christ among the quarrymen with whom he worked, and he said he would. Then he asked him if he would give up to be used of the Lord the $400 he had laid up, and he said he would, and thus the Lord saved him. The thought came to me at once that I had never made a real consecration either of myself or of my property to the Lord, but had always tried to serve the Lord in my way. Now the Lord asked me if I would serve him in his way, and go out alone and penniless if he so ordered. The question was pressed home, and I must decide, to forsake all and have him, or have all and lose him. I soon decided to take him, and the blessed assurance came that he had taken me for his own, and my joy was full. I returned home from the meeting with feelings as simple as a child. I thought all would be glad to hear of the joy of the Lord that possessed me, and so I began to tell the simple story. But to my great surprise, the pastors, for I attended meetings in 3 churches, opposed the experience and said it was fanaticism, and one told the members of his church to shun those that professed it, and I soon found that my foes were those of my own household. Close quote. End footnote. The penny was a small financial safeguard, but an effective spiritual obstacle. Not till it was thrown away could the character settle into the new equilibrium completely. Over and above the mystery of self-surrender, there are, in the cult of poverty, other religious mysteries. There is the mystery of veracity. Naked came I into the world, etc. Whoever first said that possessed this mystery. My own bare entity must fight the battle. Shams cannot save me. There is also the mystery of democracy, or sentiment of the equality before God of all his creatures. This sentiment, which seems in general to have been more widespread in Mohammedan than in Christian lands, tends to nullify man's usual acquisitiveness. Those who have it spurn dignities and honors, privileges and advantages, preferring, as I said in a former lecture, to grovel on the common level before the face of God. It is not exactly the sentiment of humility, though it comes so close to it in practice. It is humanity, rather, refusing to enjoy anything that others do not share. The profound moralist, writing of Christ's saying, "Sell all thou hast and follow me," proceeds as follows. Quote, "Christ may have meant, if you love mankind absolutely, you will, as a result, not care for any possessions whatever, and this seems a very likely proposition. But it is one thing to believe that a proposition is probably true. It is another thing to see it as a fact. If you loved mankind as Christ loved them, you would see his conclusion as a fact. It would be obvious. You would sell your goods, and they would be no loss to you. These truths, while literal to Christ, and to any mind that has Christ's love for mankind, become parables to lesser natures. There are in every generation people who, beginning innocently, with no predetermined intention of becoming saints, find themselves drawn into the vortex by their interest in helping mankind, and by the understanding that comes from actually doing it. The abandonment of their old mode of life is like dust in the balance. It is done gradually, incidentally, imperceptibly. Thus, the whole question of the abandonment of luxury is no question at all, but a mere incident to another question, namely, the degree to which we abandon ourselves to the remorseless logic of our love for others." Close quote. But in all these matters of sentiment, one must have been there oneself in order to understand them. No American can ever attain to understanding the loyalty of a Briton towards his king, of a German towards his emperor, nor can a Briton or German ever understand the peace of heart of an American in having no king, no Kaiser, no spurious nonsense between him and the common God of all. If sentiments as simple as these mysteries, which one must receive as gifts of birth, how much more is this the case with those subtler religious sentiments which we have been considering? One can never fathom an emotion or divine its dictates by standing outside of it. In the glowing hour of excitement, however, all incomprehensibilities are solved, and what was so enigmatical from without becomes transparently obvious. Each emotion obeys a logic of its own, and makes deductions which no other logic can draw. Piety and charity live in a different universe from worldly lusts and fears, and form another center of energy altogether. As in a supreme sorrow lesser vexations may become a consolation, as a supreme love may turn minor sacrifices into gain, so a supreme trust may render common safeguards odious, and in certain glows of generous excitement it may appear unspeakably mean to retain one's hold of personal possessions. The only sound plan, if we are ourselves outside the pale of such emotions, is to observe as well as we are able those who feel them, and to record faithfully what we observe. And this, I need hardly say, is what I have striven to do in these last two descriptive lectures, which I now hope will have covered the ground sufficiently for our present needs. End of Lecture 13.